Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Have you ever heard the phrase, blind as a bat? Someone says, you're blind as a bat. And you think, yeah, bats are blind. They use sound, they use radar to get to their prey every night, to get around. The reality is that bats are not blind, and their eyesight is better than most of us. In fact, large bats can see thrice better than humans. They use echolocation. But that line that you've been hearing, blind as a bat, that's a myth. And in this podcast, we're going to look at pricing myths. Most of us have these hand-me-downs, these pricing myths that have come to us, and we blindly believe them without questioning them. Let's do some questioning, shall we? It's 5:03 a.m. here in Auckland. It's autumn and it's getting colder every day. And this reminds me of the concept of putting on your coat when you go out because it's cold. Most of us have heard our parents insist on us wearing a coat, especially when we were younger. Almost every parent on the planet believes that, hey, you have to wear a coat or you'll get a cold. And yet, you don't get colds because of the temperature outside. You get a cold from viruses. And guess what? Those viruses are more likely to be indoors than anywhere else. So yes, getting that jacket or coat on is just a myth. But it sure keeps you warm. In pricing, we also have myths that keep us warm, and 3 myths prevail, causing us to lose out on charging higher prices over time. They force us to put on a coat when it's perfectly good to go outside without one. So let's take a look and find out what these myths are and how to overcome them. Myth number 1 is prices ending in 7 or 9, like 97 or 99. Myth number 2 is lower prices, and of course you get greater sales because of lower prices. And myth number 3 is you can feel the right price in your gut. Back in 1970 or 1980, a marketer called Ted Nicholas is said to have suggested that prices ending with the number 7 do better than other ending digits. This means that, theoretically speaking, you'd sell more at $9.97 than $9.99. Sure, it's only 2 cents, but does it actually sell more product or services? The answer is that price rarely, if ever, depends on your magic figure. So we decided to test the pricing on our site at Psychotactics. When we started out way back in 2002, our prices all hovered around the $7 ending. So we decided to see if changing the prices, those ending prices, made any difference. And you know where this is going, right? Yes, we ended up with prices that ended with the number 8 or the number 2 or just any old figure that came to our heads. And then we waited to see what the results would be. And nothing happened. The sales didn't go up. They didn't go down. So we started putting any sort of price endings that came to our head. One of our best-selling books, this is The Brain Audit, it has sold over $500,000 worth of copies. It sold once at $109 $2.22. Our workshops and courses, they had all sorts of odd price endings, and it didn't make any difference. Yet, what would you notice if you went to the Psychotactics website today? If you were to do a systematic sweep, you would find to your surprise that many of the prices end in 7 or 9 or 5. So why did that happen? If the price endings don't matter, how did we end up with these figures? It's a factor of laziness. When creating a price point, it's easy not to have to think about the price too much at all. And so we revert back to our 7 or 9 without much of a thought. So how do we overcome this first myth? First, you have to recognize that it is a myth. That if you're spending time wondering if you should price your product with 5 or 7 or 9, go right ahead. In all pricing experiments online and offline, you'll find that a mere ending rarely has any bearing on sales. Some sites like Target will hover madly around 7 or 9, but then slip in an 8 here and there. On equally large sites such as Expedia.com, the prices for an airline ticket can be $1,331 or $791 or $798 or $644. If you were to buy a house in, say, Washington, D.C., you'd find that houses sell at round figures. It sells at $4.5 million or $2.75 million. If you were to buy movie tickets, you'd find routinely that the prices might be $12.50 or $14 or some round figure, and there is no 9 or 7 in sight. In fact, the closer you look at different products and different services, the more you'll find there is no logic for 7 or 9. Despite the widespread use of 7 or 9, scientific studies, and these are mostly retail examples, have shown the following. At least among US retailers, there is no evidence of their effectiveness. While the use of a 9 has increased demand, it was only for new items rather than any items sold in the previous years. This suggests a novelty effect. It also talks about how in some situation there is a sale queue, as in you put up, discount sale. That's when 9 becomes less effective, not more effective. In some cases, the retailer wants to create an impression of a sale, so they put in the 7 or 9 as the price ending. However, when they sell regular merchandise, the prices are always rounded prices. People, that's customers, that's us, we see the products as valuable when they're rounded and not underpriced. So when you have 7 or 9, they often think that this is a kind of sale value and they're underpriced. And this is what retailers do. They go about studying this stuff because their whole business depends on it. So with all this conflicting information, which direction do we head in? Most of us are either selling a product or a service or training of some kind. Now, training or services are bought one at a time and after considerable evaluation of the consultant or trainer. So you're going to think, am I going to buy this course? Am I going to buy this product? And you're going to think about it for a while. If you're having a workshop, no one is jumping up and down simply because you decided to put some magical number. In fact, we have conducted the brain audit workshops over several years, pricing the very same workshop at different prices, both in US dollars and New Zealand dollars. So we've had the same workshop for $1,500 US dollars. We've had it for $800 US dollars, $500 US dollars. We've had it for 1,500 New Zealand dollars, $1,499, $800, and then also had workshops in Europe where we've had it for 879 or 835 pounds. And guess what? No difference. And the very same workshop with the very same content and the very same speaker sells out because of what people are buying and not because of the price. If it were the price, and especially the so-called magical 9 price ending, the lower prices might have triggered quicker sales. And granted, it's not industrial scale testing of the pricing, but that's how most of us are. We're selling small programs, workshops, we're selling training, we're selling services. And the customer has made up their mind whether to go ahead or not long before they see the price. So that magical $7, 57 or 77 or 79, it doesn't matter at all. So what are you to do? What's your action plan? Try it out for yourself. Push your price from $29 to $32. And what you'll be is $3 richer every time a customer buys that particular product. It may sound like it's just $3, but that's a whopping 10% increase. And your customer won't even notice. So the sooner you get off that myth of 7 or 9 as the ending price, the better. This takes us to our second myth, which is lower prices mean greater sales. Really? Let's find out. Let's say you had a choice of 3 photography courses with similar content. The prices were stacked like this: $200, $250, $2,000. What's going on through your mind right now? Curiosity, isn't it? Even though you're not sure whether you can afford the $2,000 course, you want to know why it's so expensive compared with the other photography courses. If we were truly happy with lower prices, we would simply snap up the $200 workshop, right? We wouldn't go and look at the rest. But that's not how we are as human beings. Many years ago, when I consulted with a company that sold beds in a store, we'd take customers around the store. We'd show them a bed that was worth $1,500, then one which was $2,000, and then one which was $4,000. And then we'd ask them whether they were curious about the bed that cost $4,000. You bet they were. You would be, and so would I. We'd all be curious about what caused an increase of 100% or greater in that price structure. So we're clear on one thing, aren't we? Lower prices by themselves don't make for greater sales. And that's because clients make price decisions either in a vacuum or by comparison. Let's take the vacuum situation for starters. Let's say you decided to buy a bottle of Ardbeg. That's a single malt whiskey. And wait, the price of the single bottle of 2009 Ardbeg Supernova is $550. And you aren't asking why at this point in time, because you're completely shocked out of your mind. You have nothing to compare it with. You're working in a vacuum. That same vacuum concept applies when you buy a product or a service or a course. The article writing course at Psychotactics is almost $3,000. Is it worth $3,000? You don't know, do you? You're working in a vacuum. Sure, you can see all the testimonials of all the clients who have done the course before. You can read the sales page and the course sounds incredibly detailed. You can pore over the 70-page prospectus and the course seems to tick all the boxes. And yet, we sold that course just 4 years ago for $1,500. So would you have a greater number of clients buying the course at $1,500? Theoretically speaking, yes. But then, why not reduce your prices to $750 or $350 or better still, $29? So we're taking this course which costs $3,000 and selling it at $29. Would you have greater sales of the course? You see what's happening here, don't you? As the prices go down, your desire for the course is plummeting just as quickly. And that's because you're no longer working in a vacuum, you're working on comparison. You're comparing the original price of $3,000 with every other price. And you'd compare the price of $550 of Ardbeg Supernova with every other Ardbeg until you settled on the lowest price, which would be about $60 or so. And at this point in time, if you were still keen, you'd end up spending more than $60. You probably want to go to at least $70 or $80 for no reason at all. But there is a reason, and it's called comparison. When you buy anything, you're almost always going through two distinct phases. The first phase is to consider prices in a vacuum. So let's say you go into that whiskey store, you have to buy the Ardbeg. Well, you have no clue. All of those brands are staring at you. You simply pick what seems to be a better design. Or you pick what doesn't look cheap, and so you're going for something in between, not the cheapest, not the most expensive. On the other hand, let's say you want to buy a course that has a guarantee of getting you a skill. Now, is $1,500 too high, or is $3,000 just right? And what if the course were $5,000 or $10,000 instead? Once we get to the higher numbers, we're no longer working in a vacuum. We're now comparing the benefits, or actually the results. And while the comparison is often between several brands or companies, it could be well within that same brand or company. At some point, you're comparing the $60 Ardbeg with the $550 Ardbeg. And then you're looking at everything in between. And at this point in time, we realize that the cheapest option we have at $60 is still very, very expensive. And yet, it seems cheap. So yes, we're looking at lower prices, and yes, it does increase sales, but only in comparison. But wait, how about pricing on Amazon? Or how about pricing on iTunes? Let's say you have to sell a book on Amazon. Or say a program on iTunes. Wouldn't you go for lower prices? Of course you would, because at Amazon, the very same product is hovering at $16, or if it's a Kindle book, anywhere between 99 cents to $9.99. When your Kindle book is $35, it's not cheap at all. Now, you're asking the client to take a chance on a book which is priced at about 350% over the more expensive Kindle books. When you're on Amazon or iTunes, you're competing in a completely different playing field. On those sites, they set the rules, they set the comparison structure. On your site, the client is working in a vacuum again. If you were to sell the same product, that is the same product that you sold on Amazon, without any change, exclusively on your own site, there's nothing to compare it with. A $35 book on a site seems reasonably priced, and especially if there are many other products that are both higher and lower in price. And we see this phenomenon no matter where we go. If you bought a property in Auckland, New Zealand in the year 2000, the price was about $300,000. If you bought the same house in 2005, that price was about $600,000. Today, that same house sells for $1.5 million. There's no increased value in the house, is there? If anything, the fittings and the fixtures have depreciated, not appreciated. And yet, when you buy the house, there is a factor of comparison. A house is more expensive or cheaper based on what's selling around it at that point in time. So what are you going to do? For one, stop reducing your prices unless you have to do so. If you're competing in a marketplace where prices are determined, like Amazon or iTunes, then you have to play approximately within their rules. Even so, if you have several products or versions of the product, then the client can go from comparing your price to comparing prices with different products. So even on Amazon, let's say you had the Brain Audit, and it was the Brain Audit version 3.2, and you sold it for $9.99. And then you had the Brain Audit version 4.0, which doesn't exist, by the way. Then you could sell that for $12.99 or $15.99. And what's happening now is the odd big concept. People are comparing one Brain Audit with the other Brain Audit. They're not comparing your book with another book. And so even on Amazon, you can increase your prices. Even on iTunes, you can increase your prices. Even in a very competitive market, you should create a situation where clients have left the competition and are now choosing you from your range of products or services. So they're choosing you based on, Brain Audit version 3.2 and Brain Audit version 4.0. Now, if you're selling on Amazon or you're selling on anywhere else, you might say, well, I'm going to create this comparison structure. But even if you're selling on your own site, your own shop, there's a reason for you to create a comparison structure. A client will look around and decide based on the various prices you put on your own site, even if you're not comparing oranges with oranges. So if you were to sell a product on, say, Testimonial Secrets versus a product on Client Attractors, they aren't alike in any way, yet the price of one product will cause the other product to be cheaper or more expensive in comparison. And so the comparison matters. And even if the client starts lower, they will move up the ladder depending on your ability to deliver the goods. Whether you're selling a bed or photography course, a bottle of whiskey or a workshop, you have to remember one thing. Clients are in one of two situations. They're either in a vacuum or a comparison. It's better to get them to compare, because once they paid attention to your product or service, you should then have a series of price and product comparisons on your own site. And that brings us to the end of the second part, where we looked at pricing in a vacuum and pricing in comparison. Let's move to the third part, which is you can feel the right price in your gut. So what's happening in Psychotactics land? I'm going to be back in 5000 BC and answering a whole lot of questions. And we'll have a whole bunch of series this year in 5000 BC. We're also planning to do critiques of websites, like your websites. So if you'd like to join us, we're a bunch of introverts. Not me, I'm the extrovert, but everyone else, most of the others are introverts. And it's a kind place. It's be kind, be helpful, or be gone. So why don't you join us in 5000 BC? Let's make a really good start to 2019. You, me, everyone. Still listening? When I first got to New Zealand, I would step out on a day like this, a summer's day, and people would say, "Isn't it a lovely day?" And I'd say, fine, it's a lovely day. But I came in from India, and in India, every day is sunny, except for the monsoon, which is from, say, June, and probably going up to September. But every other day is hot, every other day is sunny. And I found it really strange that people say, "Isn't it a lovely day?" What I also found strange was how they describe a rainy day. So people often say, "It's a miserable day." And that too was very strange coming from India, because in India, Rainy days are seen as these days of bounty, as these days when the crops grow and everything's beautiful and green. So there you go. New Zealand has this weird way of looking at the weather, but I still absolutely love it here.